basically, look, this is where we see your heart rate, and we see that you're producing this much lactic acid, this many millimole at this heart rate, and we think these two things go together. So yeah, we think this is the right training zone for you.
Right.
And then
so basically, like, okay, so that makes sense. So you basically just, so I'm understanding and interpreting here, essentially plot out your heart rate to lactic acid production.
Exactly.
And then find the right exact zones of where you should be and when you're training.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey friends, Jeffrey Wu here, and welcome to this week's episode of the HVMN podcast. Rowing as a sport is incredibly nuanced. While not perhaps as popular as other sports, the technique, teamwork, training, nutrition, the combination of aerobic and anaerobic exertion is incredibly high level. I've gotten some appreciation of the sport working with my colleague, Dr. Brianna Steps, who is a rower for the British national team. And that's why I was especially excited to talk to Mike DiSanto to really dive into the life of an active Olympian rower and learn even more about the sport. Mike has a unique insight here. He represented America at the 2016 Olympics in Rio, balances a full-time job with a full-time athletic career, and was actually an early user of our ketone ester when it was being developed at the University of Oxford. We touch upon the various coaching philosophies Mike has trained under and how he structures his training now, how he overcame his non-traditional rowing physique and used it to his advantage, and what's it like to compete in the Olympics. Spoiler alert, Olympic Village is not as much of a frat party as mass media might have you believe. Let's jump in. If you're tuning in via audio, remember to hit that subscribe button for weekly episodes. For folks watching on YouTube, please subscribe as well. But also hit that bell next to the red subscribe button. YouTube isn't perfect and doesn't always notify you when we post a video, so click on that bell to not miss out. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Mike, welcome to the new office and new studio.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so last time we spoke was when you visited our office a few months ago.
Yeah.
And I know that you're 4 weeks out from the World Championships.
Yeah.
How's preparation? How's training? How's that going?
Yeah, it's going great. Been training a lot. We haven't had much in the way of time off recently, but I think things are been really positive and really looking forward to the last couple of weeks before racing begins.
Yeah. So how does that typically look like? So obviously rowing, probably one of the most intense athletic events, but I would say it's probably less well known in terms of how people train for it, how people prepare for it.
Yeah.
So what does like a training block look like for you guys? I mean, are you guys on the lake, in the ocean, rowing every single day? Do you cycle your training? What does it typically look like?
Yeah. Well, I think the main differences probably revolve around like coaching philosophies or styles. So my current coach, who's been the Olympic coach, I think in 2000, 2004, 2008, and 2012.
Okay.
I think he's a big believer in intensity.
Okay.
So, but what that entails for the athletes is we're still rowing 10 or 11 times a week. We're out in the water, but there's quite a bit of side-by-side work. So, or competitive pieces. So you're always trying to beat the guys next to you. And you're very...
Are these two-man crews?
Anywhere from 2-man to 4-man to 8-man.
Okay.
And you're very aware that pieces count.
Okay.
And that, he's recording times and results. And
there's an expectation that like this is the ranking for the World Championship squad, the Olympic squad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and it's good. It brings out the best guys, show up to every practice, and you're ready to go. And I've been in other programs where it's much more endurance based. So you're out there and maybe you have a heart rate monitor and your watch, and you're told to be in this heart rate or training zone for 80 or 90 minutes. So I think there's pros and cons to each one. But it involves a lot of time out rowing. And in Oakland, where we're training out in the estuary.
Okay.
So it keeps us. There's an added element of there's boats out there. Occasionally, you'll see a sea lion. It's just like the water moves underneath you, which is rare because when we go over to the World Championships in Bulgaria, it'll be a perfectly flat 2,000 meter course, still water. There's all these specifications of what courses can and can't hold.
Interesting. So does that make your training harder than the actual match?
I think it will.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's a lot more variables where we train now than when we get over there. So I think that's something that will notice. And maybe it's only a subtle difference, but I think it is important.
Yeah. I mean, usually you want to train the same exact specifications as the match. Like, do you think you'll get an advantage because you're training in a harder water? Or is that going to kind of like trip you out a little bit when like you go over to Bulgaria and it's like, okay, a perfectly flat, still lake now?
Yeah, I think it's actually maybe a little more tricky and challenging to train where we currently do. But we're very lucky. We get an opportunity to go and train on a reservoir out in Orinda.
Okay.
That is flat water. So you can get accurate times and to test different lineups and combinations within the boat.
Okay, so you get to train on a harder surface where there's more variables, and you also get to train.
Exactly. So we get the best of both worlds.
Okay, get both.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So obviously we're doing 10, 11 sessions a week. You're doing like twice a days.
Yeah.
So what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? So it sounds like you have a training block going into the competition 4 weeks. But I guess on a weekly basis or a daily basis, like morning, walk us through, like, what did you do like yesterday or today?
Yeah. So this current coach is a very big proponent and advocate of all the guys having jobs, and not just meaning, not just, like a little job here or there, but full-time 9 to 5 jobs.
Whoa, okay.
So most of the athletes, myself included, have work, and we work anywhere from 6 to 9 hours a day. So he's really tailored our training program all year to allow us to, go to work from 9 to 5 and then get back and train. But I'd say a typical week will start on Monday. I'll wake up probably around 6, kind of get my stuff together. I live 2 minutes from the boathouse where we train over in Oakland. So just a brief commute. I'll get there. I'll do some dynamic stretching, and then we'll get out in the water around 6:40 or so.
And you're doing this fasted, no breakfast?
I do all of this fasted, yeah. For a few reasons. I know in an endurance sport like rowing, I think it helps. And you probably know the science behind it a bit better. But some of the channels for teaching your body how to tap into its fat stores.
Right, improving your fat metabolism, fat oxidation. Yeah.
But then also, I find that I have such big dinners that I rarely need, or I rarely have an appetite in the morning. The only exception is when we have hard pieces, and then I'll have
competition, like special days.
Yeah, and then I'll try to have, I'll try to have certainly a lot of coffee, and maybe a shot of ketone ester. Yeah. So, but then we'll get off the water by 8:15, 8:20, and guys will everyone will just disappear off to their jobs.
Hour and a half on rowing.
Yeah, very efficient. Like pretty much from the time you show off the dock till you get back, the practice never stops. It's just continuous, whether that's hard pieces or whether that's just a longer, lower intensity row. And then we all meet back at the boathouse around, call it 5:15, 5:30, either do like a brief weight session or some stretching, just another warm up. And then we're back out rowing at around 5:45 and probably back on the dock again around 7:30 or so.
Okay.
7:20, 7:30. And then you rush back home, make yourself some dinner, and, maybe watch some television and you're back to bed. So it's a pretty jam-packed day, but I think we're making the most of each day. So that's a good feeling.
I mean, it's actually pretty efficient if you think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're doing 4 hours approximately a day times 7, 20, under 30 hours a week.
Yeah.
Which for like an Olympic, professional athlete is, it's a lot. You guys are basically doing 2 full-time jobs. I mean, you guys are literally.
Yeah. It's something I think all of us are kind of used to because we came up and most of us did this in high school where you had to, balance a sport on top of your academics. And then certainly all of us have done it in college where it's the same thing. So in a way, you've just replaced schoolwork with work. Yeah. And it's nice that instead of like tests or quizzes, you just get paid. So that's nice.
Yeah.
To look forward to.
Is that typical against international squads?
I would say. It's pretty unique.
Because I imagine that like other countries, like they're probably training like 80 hours. I don't know, like 50 hours a week.
Yeah, I think other countries, it tends to be, not to say we aren't professional, but they tend to take more of what you would think of a professional baseball or football player here, where that's all they do.
Yeah.
But I think, I think part of the reason is that you have a lot of rowers in the U.S. that have gone to, pretty good schools.
Yeah.
And our coach says this, and I think he's right on with it. The, the biggest thing that works against like U.S. rowers is their opportunity cost. So instead of rowing, you're passing up, a career.
Yeah.
And you get, I think, pretty thoughtful, good guys who end up continuing on. And so, when you're 22, 23, 24, you're willing to make that sacrifice.
Right.
But when you get a little older, you're starting to think, well, I'd like to settle down. I'd like to
family.
Exactly. I'd like to, make, start making my way. And so this is kind of allowing guys to do both, have a job, have a meaningful job, and also train at a high level and compete at a high level.
I mean, it's pretty impressive compared to international squads where they're just full-time physical specimens, basically.
Yeah. Well, I think do
you guys feel like a disadvantage, or do you feel like because your time is so focused, you actually have a creative outlet for your intellectual pursuits? You find that as a strength?
I guess at first it's easy to think, how are we going to be able to do this? Yeah. But as the years gone on, I think I've probably been performing as well as I've ever been able to. And I think part of the reason is that maybe on the surface, it doesn't look like physiologically or physically the best thing to do. But for me, it allows me to mentally and emotionally unplug from a potentially stressful or, anxiety-ridden practice when you're going through selection, and you unplug and you have to throw yourself into work.
Yeah.
So I think it's really helped me a lot. And I think it takes a pretty progressive coach and a pretty open-minded coach to allow guys to do that. Yeah. But
I'm sure like he gets judged on like how well the U.S. team does,
exactly,
right? And like if he's like, okay, and I'm gonna still let my guys go and have a full-time job. That's
I guess we'll know more in 4 weeks.
Yeah,
but I think I'm optimistic, and I think the objective results along the way have been promising. So hopefully we can.
Yeah, what are the expectations? I know that U.S. is obviously a powerhouse of an Olympic sport squad. Like, how does U.S. typically rank in terms of Olympics and World Championships?
Yeah. The women have been dominant.
Okay.
The women, they've in the women's 8, which is kind of I'd say the blue ribbon event. I guess the 8 is generally considered the blue ribbon event. It's like the heavyweight of boxing.
Yeah.
So the women have won every Olympics since. So they've won 2008, 2012, 2016.
Okay.
They got silver in 2004. So they have a very strong legacy and tradition there. The men have been a bit more up and down there. So hoping to get it back.
Yeah.
Reestablish it. But I think you do all this training, and you're certainly not doing it to go over there and finish second or third or miss the medals. So you're doing it, and that's okay. I think you take confidence from the training. It's good to have a good goal, but a realistic goal. So
maybe this might be a stupid question, but like you read and hear how different athletes respond towards placement, and like it sounds like if you are fourth, you feel like really, really bad because you miss, placing on the medal. If you're third, like you're really happy because you're on the medal, you're on the stand. Second, you feel really, really bad because you didn't get gold.
Yeah.
Is that true in terms of how you think about it?
Yeah. Well, I can speak.
I know in Rio.
Yeah, we finished fourth in Rio, so I can speak from personal experience. I think there's two things at play. One is like the small picture, just how the regatta played out.
Right.
And then there's like, you get to kind of contextualize that within the big picture. So I think within the big picture, I'm not okay with it, but I understand like there were certain things that went well and didn't go so well. Within the regatta, I think, we just a younger crew, and we just, at the end of the day, you got to go out there, and on the finals day, you got to have your best race. And we didn't do that. So that was very frustrating.
Right. So you felt like you left something on the table.
You just wish that you could have gone out there. You don't want to get off the water and feel that wasn't our best race. I think it's an easier pill to swallow if you go out there and you're like, well, we had the 10 out of 10 perfect piece, and we still
And 3 squads just like
had
the perfect race and still beat us.
Yeah. But, it's good. And I think it forces everyone to take a step back and kind of look in the mirror and say, what more could you have done as an individual or as a teammate? And it just shows you that the margin for error on that level is so small.
Yeah.
And that, if you want to go back, you want to put your cards back on the table or your chips back in the middle of the pot, that you got to be ready for that. But this time, you're going back for a much different.
So you were on the US 8 and
I was, yeah.
So did you do the 4? There's a 2 and 4 and 8 for the Olympics.
So there in rowing, there is sweeping. Yeah. So think one person, one oar, and then there's sculling. So one person, 2 oars.
Right. Okay.
So I'm on the sweep team. And I was so I went to the World Championships twice in 2013 in Cheongju, South Korea.
Okay.
And then in 2015 in France, in a town called Abelet, which is just like a stunning place to row.
Yeah.
And I was in the men's pair. So each my pair partner and I each had 1 oar.
Okay.
And we did all right there. And then in the Olympic year in 2016, I made it into the 8 for Rio, where we finished 4th. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. This might be a good time to just like go down and go back in a little bit in history. Yeah. I mean, obviously a very credentialed international career. How'd you get into rowing? I mean, did you have parents that liked rowing?
No.
I mean, obviously our mutual friend and our HVMN colleague, Brianna, I think she got into it because her dad was a rower. Like they were doing like a cross-Atlantic little journey, and she was inspired to learn there. I'm curious how you got into rowing.
It's kind of a funny story, I guess. So I grew up, playing baseball. That's what I was really adamant about.
Classic American.
Yeah, exactly. I was really passionate about it. And I loved it. And I think I was respectable for a while. And then I went to high school, and it was it was all guys school. I think, very, very focused on athletics. And, I was like competitive there, but kind of as I got older, the, my baseball started slipping a bit. So, and I used to be a pretty good hitter. And, all of a sudden, I'm not such a good hitter anymore. And yeah, I guess one thing led to another.
It's like you just couldn't see the ball come in? Or
I couldn't make contact. And that's a big part of, but, as they say, as a door closes, a window opens. The other part of this school I went to, you had to play a different sport every season. Yeah. So I wasn't able to just play baseball. I played football in the fall, I wrestled in the winter, and I played baseball in the spring. So
damn. So it was like a 3 varsity kid or kind of a thing.
Eventually I got there. It took a while. But what happened is I had picked up wrestling when I got there. And the wrestling coach, him and the rowing coach were friends. And this was my sophomore year. So I was 16 years old, 15, 16. He was like, I think I got this guy who's a wrestler who I think you should look at for the rowing team. So he comes over and we're talking about it. He's trying to convince me to row. I'm like, I don't know. I've always played baseball. I had my deposit down with the school to go on the training camp for the baseball team down to Florida. And about, I think a day or two before we're set to leave, I was just like, okay, let's give rowing a shot. Because it was like, baseball wasn't quite working out. This coach really wanted me to try his sport. He's like, look, no strings attached. Worst case, you try it for 2 weeks and you decide you want to go back to baseball. That's fine with me. And again, I think I look back.
What do you think was the eye for talent? I mean, clearly you're a super talented rower, but when you're 16, was your? I mean, I know we talked about this before, but your physique is not a classical rower, right?
No, it wasn't
not by any
means.
You're like a 6'8",
super
lanky dude.
Yeah. I think they just saw that I was tough. I think what they saw is that I was tough and I was willing to work hard. Okay. I think there are some intangible things you can't teach people, and I think I was very lucky to have my wrestling coach kind of draw those things out of me. And I'll be totally honest. Before I started wrestling, I think I was pretty soft. I think I was. I don't think I knew what it meant to really push yourself.
Right.
And lucky for very luckily for me, that I think translated past just the athletic field and into the classroom or into work. Like, what does it really mean to push yourself to the limit and really pursue something and throw yourself at it? So I had a kind of transformation, a coming out, if you will, that when I was 16 in that wrestling season. And I think it kind of launched me into rowing, and it kind of, I think, launched me into a lot of good things.
So you had the 2-week trial and like you, like, I guess loved it or like enjoyed it or you hated it? And,
I guess
what?
I was like, this is cool. There was just like a really good energy on that team. And I didn't know what I was doing, but everyone was so positive. I think the group of guys that were on that team, it was just a lot of fun. And, it was guys I had played football with. That was the thing that rowing coach in high school looked for. He didn't look for like traditionally good rowers. He looked for kids who were like athletic and like were willing to work hard and push themselves. So you had kids that played hockey or kids that played football or kids that like did all these other sports come together.
Where'd you go to high school?
It's called Belmont Hill. It's about 15 or 20 minutes outside of Boston.
Okay.
All guys school.
Okay. Makes sense. Because I don't think there's a lot of rowing in California.
There's some, actually, believe it or not, Marin and but Newport and like in SoCal is pretty big. But Marin and the Oakland Strokes are the two really big ones in the Bay Area. So yeah, we just had like a great experience, and I kind of like stuck with it. And then I think I realized that like I was actually pretty good at it.
Yeah.
And then I think it's like anything, you taste some success and you just want more. And and I guess the rest is kind of history.
Yeah. I mean, were you guys like state champs or, I mean?
Yeah. So we won like the national championships my junior year.
So you're really damn good.
Well, I mean, there's there's other guys on the boat. So
you guys had a good rowing program.
Oh yeah. We like the coach is incredible. I think since 2000.
National high school champs is like, I mean, no joke.
Yeah.
You guys were good.
Yeah. So I was very lucky to have him as a coach, but like I said, a lot of really good teammates and other rowers on that team. So he's probably coached, I would guess, since 2006 and now he's probably coached around 10 boats that have either like won or got second at the national championships. So, I'm long gone, but he's still producing results. So I think it's more of a testament to him.
I mean, that sounds like he's just got a program down. And I think, I think talking about physique, there's actually an audience question here.
Yeah.
That I think Lewis asks, what is the ideal physique? And I think we just touched upon it, right?
Yeah.
Like the classic rower type is like a very tall, lanky individual.
I would guess probably 6'4", 6'6",
right.
in that range, probably 210, 215 pounds. That's, when you think like prototypical, if you were just like, look at people walking down the street and you see someone like that, you'd be like, oh, I'd, check him out as a rower.
Right. And the idea is like you basically get torque from the long limbs.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, it's a sport of leverage.
Yeah.
So you get a little bit longer stroke, a little bit longer arc.
Right.
And you can just apply a little bit more force.
So your physique, you're not quite 6'4", right?
Yeah.
I mean,
no, I'm, on a good day, we'll say 6'1". Okay. On a good day.
Okay. So you're overcoming like the not ideal physique. I mean, like, what is your edge? I mean, clearly you're performing at world-class, top of the world Olympic level. Like, what do you think? Is it your, training or discipline, your stamina? Like, you have more power than the typical average? Like, what makes you overcome some of the, the disadvantage of not having the ideal physique?
I think a lot of coaches that were also willing to look past it, because there are coaches that are like, oh, you don't fit the mold.
Right.
We're not even going to give you an opportunity.
Right.
So, high school, college, Oxford, now the national team, coaches that are just, like, okay, if this guy can go out there and row and perform. Also, I think just, I remember spending a lot of summers, like a lot of time training, doing extra work before I even understood like how the physiology, how it all worked.
Right.
Just, my freshman year after college, I just spent so much time in the boathouse every day. And
you just outworked everyone.
Yeah. For a long time, I think that was like the equalizer for me.
Yeah.
And not to say that I don't now, but I think as I've gotten older, I've tried to be a little bit smarter with how I've worked. So while I think you can still go back and rely on that and outworking everyone. And that's something, I still need to do, and I still try to do, but it's also now like focusing that in, like, how can I work hard and be smart about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been I would say a more recent development in sports science, where I would say, like before like 1980s, there wasn't even a notion of professional sports, right? If you look at like Roger Bannister, for example, he was like a Oxford medical student that like happened to like be a runner, and he broke the 4-minute mile. And then really in the last like 20, 30 years, you had like the cash machine of like the Olympics. I mean, the athletes don't get paid for Olympics, but like professional, like NBA, NFL, but the Olympics is a massive business for like the sponsors and the host countries and whatnot. And then you really had like this huge rise of like the professional athlete class. I think there's been a lot more science on how to best train athletes. And I think that has shifted from, sort of gentleman athletes, right? From like 1980s previously to then like people just like working out all the time. Yeah. And oftentimes that gets into overtraining or injury. Yeah. And I think I would say in the last 5-10 years, there's been an emphasis on recovery, like set up your training blocks where you have intense periods and really relaxed periods.
Absolutely.
What does that look like for you? Or is that part of the US program? Or is that something that you think about like very, cognizantly to make sure that you're fully recovered, you don't get injured? Yeah. I mean, my sense talking to professional athletes is that getting injured is like the worst. Yeah. Like you just totally stop progress, regress, and it takes so much effort to get back to healthy.
It does. Yeah. So I didn't really I was lucky not to run into any of that till I actually got over to Oxford. Okay. So I went over there to do my master's degree. As I was mentioning a bit earlier, the coach there was just a big believer in, volume. So lower intensity, high volume.
So you did your undergrad at Harvard, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess that would be interesting.
So graduating.
It'd be interesting to kind of compare the programs and compare the evolution.
Yeah. So Harvard, I get to row for a coach, Harry Parker, who unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago, was there for 51 years. And again, just was, gave me an opportunity to prove myself even as like a smaller guy in the program.
Imagine you were like a recruited athlete, right? If you were like a national champ, high school.
Yeah, okay. But believe it or not, even at like 17 or 18, you have guys like going on and who are, albeit at the junior level, but they're world champs or competing at the world's level. So I wasn't even that good. And to be totally honest, I almost missed the freshman boat. So that was rowing was one of the last sports, maybe even the last sport to have a freshman team. And they just did away with that a few years ago. So of the like 16 or 17 guys in our freshman class, I was probably in an 8-man boat. I was like the 8th guy in.
Wow.
But like I said, that following summer, it just really, gave me some incentive to work hard because I was like, well, look, you almost missed out on the freshman boat. Imagine how much harder it's going to be when you get into the varsity team now. Right. So I was there, graduated in 2000.
So Harvard must be like it's like a top rowing program, I assume, for D1 colleges.
Yeah. So 2 really good schools on the West Coast at the University of Washington and Cal Berkeley. Okay. And on the East Coast, it's Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Brown are generally, those are more or less your top 6. Okay. Yale's been pretty dominant recently, which hopefully will change.
It's okay. The old safety school.
But Washington and Cal are very strong. Okay. And Washington won like 5 national championships in a row not too long ago. So they're kind of the preeminent rowing school at the moment, I would say. But so yeah, I was there under Harry, and he really left the ball in the guys' court to do as much or as little training as they wanted. So we only had really 6 organized practices a week at Harvard, and then the rest was up to you. So I think the guys who were competing for the varsity boat would probably do like 3 or 4 extra workouts a week. So I guess the program really rewarded guys that were self-motivated and didn't mind putting in some extra hours.
Right.
So from there, I graduated in 2012, and I spent a year with the U.S. national team. And as I mentioned, made it into the pair. I went to the World Championships in Cheongju, which is about 2 hours south of Seoul in South Korea. And then I had been accepted to a research program at Oxford in psychiatry.
Oxford has a very strong rowing program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a terrific coach. So that's where, I started to probably run into a bit of this like overtraining where it was so much, the duration was so much. And I came from this, I think probably typical American mindset of more is more.
Right.
So, it was as scientific and as measured a program as you could ever hope or ask for. It was great. But we were, always given these training zones. In my first couple of years, I would rarely stay in them because I thought, I can push harder. So why would I? I didn't fully appreciate
why there was training zones. Okay.
I didn't fully appreciate because
so the training zones were based on your heart rate, basically.
Exactly.
Okay. So it's be in the anaerobic threshold. Don't be
exactly
maxed out, like maximal threshold.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just thought,
so you were just going maximal the whole time through.
Yeah. It wasn't. Maybe it wasn't quite as. I guess the philosophy at Oxford was more of a, polarized training. So when it's easy, go easy, and when it's hard, go as hard as you can. Right. And I was probably spending a little too much time in that gray area where I'm probably just
your easy days aren't easy enough.
Yeah, exactly. And then that takes away from how hard you can go.
Yes.
So I learned the hard way with some, in the fall, especially in my second year there. With some disappointing scores. But, finally I got it through my head that, maybe I just do need to go a little easier.
Right.
But, injuries and overtraining, they can be, they're terrible. And I think probably the worst thing that people don't account for is like, you're away from the team. And in these like team driven sports like rowing or, a lot of other professional sports, that can just take a toll on you. I think
like emotionally, okay.
Yeah. Cause you're on your own. You have your separate training program and you can just feel very isolated. And I think that's coupled with being injured. So you're already maybe disappointed or a little upset about that. And it's just like a double whammy.
Yeah.
So I totally sympathize.
Yeah, no, it just reminds me a lot of like also just the our friends in the military where if you're just like you have your brothers or your comrades in arms, and like if you're injured, you're like away from them, and like you lose your sense of identity a little bit, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it can be pretty deflating, if the team's going down to row
at
1:30, and instead of that or whatever time they're going to row, you're kind of off on the bike on your own. And I guess like ultimately we're social creatures and social beings, and to not have those like interactions with people, whether it's on the bus or in the boat. Or just like you said, that camaraderie and that feeling of like belonging on a team can be tough.
Yeah. I think one thing that you mentioned, I think that's also been something that's come up in a previous conversation is you don't go easy enough on your easy days. So what is an easy day like? What is it supposed to look like for you?
So sorry.
And like, what did you do wrong? Like it'd just be interesting kind of just like tease into that a little bit more.
Well, that is definitely something that's probably my main focus now is like you said, recovery. And so when we get days off, I really try to, and for me, I think mostly about like a mental release, like what is going to be good for me mentally, and not necessarily what's going to be, I say like what's going to make me happy,
right?
And that's been my main focus. I think probably in this last year is maybe this isn't like the best thing for me, like recovery wise, in terms of like a physiological textbook, right? Oh, you should be like resting with your legs up and sleeping as much as possible.
Right.
But I think, we're working out, like you said, it's a lot of hours in a week, and you get this time off. And I think there is this like kind of mind-body relationship that we don't fully understand yet, but like a happy athlete is probably going to be a good athlete. Yeah. So, Saturdays I'll try to come into the city and catch up with people and maybe have a few beers.
Yeah.
And, where in the past I'd be pretty reluctant and resistant to do that. Now I'm much more focused on it. And then Sunday, we'll have Sunday morning off and won't have training again until Sunday afternoon. So I'll try to like go on a bike ride or go on a hike or go to the beach. Something that I would, enjoy and I guess do even if I wasn't rowing. Just to, I guess, kind of enjoy that part and have that part of my life.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we had a conversation with Jeff Berkovicki, who's an author. He wrote about the extended longevity of athletes. And one of the patterns he saw was that the best athletes were like the happy athletes, the people that really love the sport. So curious to get into your head a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, you've rowed for 10 plus years by this point, right? 12 years, right? Yeah. What's the attitude when you go on I mean, is it something that like is a job? Is it like fun? I mean, is it a craft that like you want to keep perfecting? What's your mindset and thoughts towards the sport and towards the practice?
I think with rowing, with anything you take very seriously, I think it can, there can be times where it's very, very tough and very challenging, and it does feel like a slog.
Yeah.
But there are going to be days where, like the boat's rowing really well, or you perform at an incredible level. And those are the days that I think make it worth it. And one of my teammates who's retired said this to me, and I think it's probably the truest thing I've heard about rowing. And I would imagine most professional athletes or most athletes feel this way. The lows can be pretty low, but the highs are as high as you'll probably ever experience. I think that's why you keep going back. Like winning a big race or having like an incredible PR. Yeah. Those feelings of just like, I've put so much time and effort into this and it's paid off. That feeling of it all being worth it is unlike anything else. Yeah. But no, I guess my mindset with rowing, I don't know if I'd say it changes frequently. I don't view it as a job. I'm not exactly sure why I don't view it as a job, but I guess like, there are these added elements of, being down there with guys that you're friends with and great friends with, and you get to spend time with. And, as I said, it can be really tough in trying at times. But I think, a couple times, hopefully at least a couple times a week, you think, yeah, it's all worth it. All this time, all this effort, it's certainly worth it.
Yeah. So obviously, given our audience and our community here, people are really keen on nutrition. So we talked a little bit about how you go into your usual morning workouts fasted. What does the rest of your meals look like? What is the timing of those meals? Yeah. Is it super thoughtful? Are you just, a lot of professional athletes that sometimes are just like, we just eat candy because we just like aren't disciplined. There's like, the samurais who like have a very, very rigorous protocol towards exactly what they put into their body. Yeah. Where do you sit? What does your typical program look like?
I'd say this is something I was probably at one point much more of a samurai in terms of what I was eating. And now, I'm more of a believer. Sometimes you just got to do what makes you happy. Yeah. So my not to say my eating is bad, but if I'm sometimes like, oh, I want to go get ice cream, I'm going to have ice cream. Yeah. A couple of years ago, I wouldn't even, I'd feel so guilty if I had ice cream. Yeah. I would just feel like, I wasn't doing everything in my power to do, what was best for my training away from rowing. Right. But yeah, so I'll get back. I'll generally eat some like full fat Greek yogurt with like a lot of hemp seeds and nuts.
That's pretty high fat.
Yeah. I'd say I'd try to trend towards like a ketogenic diet.
Interesting.
Most of the time. I'm not like perfect by any stretch, but I'm definitely like aware of sugars and carbohydrates, and I do eat them, but I just
especially as an athlete, I mean, you need carbs.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, but I do try to stay away from them, in mass. Okay, and that's I do I eat pizza, I eat I eat pasta, but
sparing. It's like it's a choice. It's not like your mainstay.
Yeah. And, but at night for dinner, I'll generally have a steak and, vegetables. And then maybe if my roommates make rice, I'll have like a scoop of it, but more because I need it. Yeah. Or I know I need it, not because, I'd say when rowing's done, I'll probably.
So you have a late breakfast, post-workout.
Yeah, right away.
Do you have like a lunch?
I do. For me, it's pretty simple. And some people find it really weird. It's a toast with peanut butter. Right around like 12 or 1 o'clock, I have 2 slices of toast, lather it up with like the Whole Foods freshly ground peanut butter, and there's something about it. I just love it. I can eat it every day and never get sick of it, and I look forward to it. And it fills me up, And I know that if I have to go perform in the afternoon, then I'll be ready to do that as well.
So that's literally what you eat every single afternoon.
For lunch. Yeah. And then again, maybe some more nuts, big into cashews and almonds.
Okay.
But yeah,
I mean, that sounds pretty ketogenic.
Yeah.
I mean, besides the toast, but okay, it's fine. You're probably expending a ton of glycogen.
Yeah.
That full fat yogurt, I mean, it's something that it's kind of hard to find, no?
I just grab the stuff at Trader Joe's because, I love the taste of it. And I know that sometimes what they use to replace the fat in terms of flavor
sugar.
is, and it's not great for you. So I'd rather, I don't by any means view fat as the enemy. I know some people do, but no, I mean, I cook my steaks in quite a bit of butter.
Yeah.
I
mean, that tide is shifting. I mean, I think a lot of that science is getting sort of relooked at. So,
yeah.
I mean, obviously, as you know, a lot of our community is very interested in fasted workouts and a ketogenic diet.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear that it's working for you and how you're performing at the elite level.
Absolutely. No, I'm a big believer in it. And
when do you have your dinner?
Late these days, probably around 8.
Okay.
That's probably not as much by design. That's kind of post
workout.
So, we're not getting off the water till 7:20, 7:30.
Oh man.
And then I need to I'm lucky because I only live 2 minutes from the boathouse. So I just run home, if I have a steak in the fridge or steak or fish, a lot of nights.
And you just, after you eat, you just go right to bed basically.
I try to have a blow off period, but by 9:30,
you're exhausted.
I'll be ready to go. Except for actually when we do peace days, so hard days, and I have a lot of caffeine, probably more than is healthy. But so I and this is a plug for you guys, but an honest plug. I have struggled to sleep those nights. So instead of going to bed at 9:30 or 10, it's more like 11:30 or 12 by the time you actually fall asleep. So I was talking to Brianna, who's one of your employees, and she's like, "Well, why don't you try one of our products?"
Right.
So she sent me some, or I'm not sure who sent me some, but someone sent me some. And I tried the Yawn stuff, and I was like, okay, I'm not really feeling it. And then all of a sudden it was just all right, lights out. And it was perfect. So we had pieces this morning. I have a pill I'm going to take when I get home around
glad to help. Awesome to hear.
I mean, it is terrific because that's been, I'd say, I am a big believer in sleep. But it is tough when 1 or even 2 days of your week, you're getting reduced sleep because you're just so amped up from all the
I mean, so you're kind of averaging 7-ish hours a day, which is
maybe I'd say by the time so I maybe just over that. Because I'll probably wake up around just at 6 or maybe slightly before. So if I'd say probably maybe closer to 8. Get a sleep in on the weekends a touch, but that is probably one area. If I looked at it, that's probably as the years go on and as we get closer to the Olympics, that's probably one area where I'll continue to say, look, I can be quite a bit better here.
Just sleeping.
Yeah. Just I should be going maybe pushing bedtime forward half an hour.
Yeah. I mean, just hard if your practices end at 7:30.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard. My roommates are very good at it. So there's no excuse but for me not to also be okay, it's time to go to bed.
I mean, if you're preparing for Olympics, does it make sense to shift up your afternoon session? I mean, okay, we're going to Tokyo, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to Tokyo. Here's our last training block. Let's have a 3 o'clock afternoon workout as opposed to a 6 o'clock, after, workout.
Yeah. Well, I think
so you can actually go to bed at 9.
Yeah.
And eat dinner at 6.
Yeah. Well, I think it's currently really good because you're allowing guys to keep training and work their full-time jobs.
Right.
But I'm sure, I'd be totally supportive of it. A couple months out from the Olympics, it's probably time to put everything else in your life on hold, at least for a couple months.
Yeah.
And just really focus in.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'd be remiss to not talk about it, but Olympic Village, Rio.
Yeah. Ask away.
Yeah. I mean, how was that experience? How was hanging out with like the celebrity, athletes, or at least seeing them, I imagine.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's just like a special moment that not a lot of people get the opportunity to, be in such a, global event.
Yeah.
What was it like, I guess parading with the athletes and all of that? Like, what.
So the village was great. And the way it works, I guess the best way to describe it is just this kind of big apartment complex, maybe call it 20-story buildings.
Okay.
And the big countries like the United States, I say big countries with big like teams.
Okay.
So the United States, Canada, Australia, Great Britain, they'll each get their own building.
Okay.
And then there are smaller countries will have.
And were these buildings constructed just for you guys?
Yeah, with the idea that after the games, they turn into just like an apartment complex.
Okay.
So, I was in the Team USA building with, I think so teams, I guess, before you go down there, you can opt to either stay in the village or stay closer to your venue.
Right.
And we opted to stay in the village. And a lot of teams, as far as I could tell, also decided to stay there. With the exception, the notable exception is the basketball team.
Because they're all like 100 millionaire
dudes. Yeah, exactly. But a cool story about that. So, we actually the opening ceremonies, I think, were on a Friday. And our first race was a Monday. So we opted to just dress up in the garb, take some pictures at the village and not go, just because it's a huge song and dance.
Right.
It's
get long. I mean, I'm sitting at home.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm just boring. It's boring.
Yeah. And we all decided, it would be a cool thing to do, but at the end of the day, like, we're not here to march in the opening ceremonies. We're here to compete.
Yeah.
So we dressed up and, we're getting ready to go down and just take pictures in the village. And we're pressing the elevator button and, the door opens and guess who's in there? The Team USA basketball team.
Okay.
So we're just like standing there. They're standing there. They're kind of like, oh boy, like we just want to get down to the buses.
Yeah.
But, before the door shuts all the way, our coxswain, who's like the little guy who steers the boat, kind of like the jockey.
Yeah.
He's just like, wait a minute, we got to get a picture. So he like runs and puts his hand back in the door and it opens again. And everyone else is just sitting there starstruck. They're like, whoa, look at these guys like Kyrie Irving, Carmelo, Boogie Cousins, DeMar DeRozan. And it's all these, guys you see on TNT and just all the time. And the door shutting again. He's like, guys, I need a picture. So Wilhelm's like, come on, man, it's so hot. We can get a picture at the opening ceremony. He's like, no, we're not going. So he's there, and I can send you guys a picture if you want it.
That'd be funny to just like put it on the show notes.
And you can see that Boogie Cousins is not thrilled.
He's like,
he's so upset. But Carmelo, has a huge smile on his face. Yeah. But so what we hadn't realized was that, like, for security reasons, I guess, no matter who you are, even if you're the Team USA basketball star, you need to go to the village and get the buses from the village to the opening ceremony. Right. So they'd been allocated rooms in the village just to get changed for this event. Yeah. And they were going down to get on the buses. Right. And we just, like, as luck would have it, we're pushing the elevator button as they were on their way down. Yeah. So it was that was great. And then you see other athletes, Michael Phelps. Yeah.
Did he stay in the village?
He was, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think not that we had any conversations, but, he just seemed like very focused in on what he was about to do.
Were people fangirling each other, or just everyone's a professional? Everyone's like clearly the top of their field?
It really depends. Okay. It really depends. Usain Bolt is there. Everyone's going up for his autographs.
So like Usain Bolt, like mega celebrity of the
I'm not sure, but he might have even had like a bodyguard or someone with him in the village. Whoa. I think he may have. Yeah. And then you see I think Djokovic was in the village. I mean, at some stage I guess we kind of had this attitude as a group of guys. It was like, look, we're very lucky. The Olympics are 2 weeks. Yeah. Our last race is the end of week 1. So you still have all of week 2 to
enjoy.
Exactly.
And be a tourist.
Exactly. Yeah. And like go up to these athletes. And you do. There are venues around the entire Olympics that it's like, if you're part of Team USA, no matter who you are, if you're me or if you're, Ricky Fowler, the golfer.
Right.
Okay, he probably gets treated a little bit better, but like you're still welcome to go in there.
Yeah.
And one of them is the Team USA house, which is just this house. It was right on Ipanema Beach, like, literally across the street from the ocean.
Okay.
And, if you're an athlete or a family member of an athlete, you get to go in. It's like food and beverage pretty much from 11 a.m. until midnight every day.
It's like a nice luxury beach house.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
Just like kick it.
Music, you can just go there and hang out at any point. So that was cool. I will say this. I know I get to ask this question probably more than anything. I think people have this idea about the village just being like pretty debaucherous, but it's not. Or at least in my experience, it wasn't at all. And I didn't even realize this, but there's a like no drinking policy in the village because athletes are competing up until the last day of the games.
Right.
So the last event at the Olympics is always the marathon. So, I'd been done for, I don't know, 7 days or I forget exactly like how the closing ceremonies timed up, but the marathon had gone off like that afternoon or that morning. So we're at the closing ceremonies and the last medals that get presented are the Olympic marathon medals, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
You're at the Olympic Village, closing ceremonies, everyone's there. So in my experience, it was nowhere near as wild as it.
Right, because you have like they always write up like 1 million condoms were shipped to the village.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. The only people we saw going for the condom dispensers were coaches.
Really?
Because they put the condom dispensers in the dining hall, which is enormous. It's probably 2 or 3 football fields long.
Okay.
Because it has to house, 10,000 or so.
Oh, how are the coaches getting busy? They're just like.
But the thing is, the condom dispensers make this like incredible noise. Those quarter machines.
So it's like
you put
awkward
into,
as hell.
and
So just like announce the world.
Yeah, exactly. You spin it like 3 or 4 times, and then something falls out. So, but the acoustics of that were so that it just projected it.
Right.
So you'd hear that, and you just look over your shoulder and be like, who's it, like without a doubt, I'd say 9 times out of 10, it was like coaches. You're just like, I'm not sure that's who those were for, but
I guess it makes sense for coaches because like their job is kind of done. It's like keep their guys and keep their girls lined up, and once their event's done, it's like okay.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah, I think this kind of relates to the question here. Aaron asks, which athletes do you look up to and why? I mean, it sounds like there were some, tennis, basketball folks that you looked up just because they're kind of celebrities, but just in your own career, I mean, there's clearly a couple coaches that were seminal to your development. Yeah. Are there like rowing athletes that you look up to? Yeah.
So in terms of like rowing athletes, there's one guy, and he was a guy I looked up to when I was at Harvard. His name's Malcolm Howard. Mm-hmm. He was a Harvard athlete. He graduated in 2005 and then won the Olympics in 2008, silver in 2012. And I got to row with him at Oxford my first year there. Mm. And he's just been, he was the guy I looked up to the most in rowing. And he's been a mentor ever since. We talk weekly. And he's just been, just such a good influence and a positive influence on my life. And he's been there before, he's done it all. So he, anytime I'm struggling or I need to bounce an idea, he's the person I always reach out to. And then I'd say in terms of more, just traditional athletes, probably Larry Bird, believe it or not, just, in that, he was an exceptional basketball player, but not because of anything, not because of any innate like physical talent, but because he worked hard and he was tough.
How did you come up? I mean, I feel like we're kind of young to like see him in his heyday, right? Yeah. Well, I guess you grew up in Boston, and for a long, he was a Boston legend. He's a Boston legend, right? Yeah. And my dad watched him play, so my dad would tell me about how he's so clutch. It's like anytime the Celtics needed it, they'd give Larry Bird the ball and he'd hit it. And he played through back injuries. He was just a tough guy. And there's stories about him. So the way it works, the Garden in Boston, you have the Bruins and you have the Celtics there. Mm-hmm. So they have the ice. Then when there's a Celtics game, they put the parquet down over the ice. But the parquet, like the way they would do it is that there would sometimes be dead spots on the floor.
So he would go around the entire garden with like a squash ball or a tennis ball and find out where the dead spots would be. So if he's playing defense, he could kind of position a guy into it for the steal, or he would know when he had the ball, where to go, where not to go.
That's really home court advantage.
Yeah.
Because he knew that there's just like different temperature spots.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But just like the I guess the effort that would take to do, on a regular basis, in how hard he worked, just to get to where, you have 3-time NBA champ, I think a 1 or 2-time league MVP,
right.
But not like innately. You look at him and you're probably not like, oh, this guy's a great basketball player.
Gangly looking dude.
Exactly. But, just as someone who grew up in Boston, he's a guy I'd say I look up to the most.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
Yeah.
One thing that you touched upon that I think is also interesting is at Oxford, very, very quantified in terms of how you measure performance.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of folks listening probably interested in quantified self, different biomarkers that you track. Are you super nerdy with like everything you track? Are you more intuitive? I mean, another way to ask the question is that there are some athletes that I talk to that are like animals in the sense that just no measurement. I just want to feel the course, feel my body, understand my body intuitively. And other athletes are like, I'll measure everything. I'm like a scientist on how I treat my body.
Yeah.
Obviously, everyone is kind of a mix of both.
Yeah.
Curious to get your thoughts and, one, like what biomarkers, if you track any biomarkers, are you most interested in? And then 2, how do you think about intuition versus science? So
I guess this probably goes kind of hand in hand with how I've treated my diet. So, at Oxford, like very regimented, very scientific, you wear a heart rate monitor every practice. It gets recorded, you upload it so the coaches and physiologists can look at it. You get your load score at the end of each week through Training Peaks. And then you sit down and you'd have like probably every 6 or 8 weeks, you have some form of testing, step testing, and then like max testing as well, just to see how you've progressed and see if.
What's step testing? What's max testing?
Yeah. So for us, it was, I think it was 6 4-minute steps. So each one gets progressively harder. Basically checking your lactic acid production and checking your heart rate to make sure those are kind of lining up, as you shift through these different zones.
So at the end of 4 minutes, they just prick your ear, collect your lactate.
Yeah, they collect blood, and then they have, I think, a centrifuge, and like they spin it up. And I don't understand all the science behind it, but I trust that they did.
Yeah.
And they could say basically, look, this is where we see your heart rate, and we see that you're producing this much lactic acid, this many millimole at this heart rate, and we think these two things go together. So we think this is the right training zone for you.
Right.
And then
so basically, like, okay, so that makes sense. So you basically just, so I'm understanding and interpreting here, essentially plot out your heart rate to lactic acid production.
Exactly.
And then find the right exact zones of where you should be and when you're training.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I guess it evolves over a training block.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, now like you're improving your lactic acid production is more efficient or lower for set heart rate.
Exactly.
Let's evolve your training protocol.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's cool to see. You start the year and maybe you're at 250 watts, and that requires you to, at the end of an hour session, that's like 2 millimoles or whatever.
Right.
6 or 8 weeks later, maybe it's 1.7 millimoles of lactic acid. And then before you know it, it's like 1.3, 1.1, 0.9. So you see objectively, it's not like, oh no, I wonder if I'm in better shape. It's like, no, you are in better shape.
Yeah, you're producing 50% less lactate.
Yeah. And then we do, max testing, which for us was always a 5K.
5K.
On the rowing machine. Yeah. So you set the monitor for 5,000 meters as quick as you can go.
Yeah.
It was funny. We did comparatively such little maximum effort stuff at Oxford that those were you always felt incredibly nervous, incredibly, it felt like this is huge. This is 8 weeks of my season kind of condensed down to
this one number.
Yeah, one number.
Yeah.
But now I'd say we do so much. It's almost the opposite. We do just a lot of testing, a lot of a lot of like
This is
max,
US team.
a lot of max effort stuff. So
like
you
once
just
a day, once a week?
I'd say like max twice a week. When before the team moved out here in February, a lot of guys are still located on the East Coast. So unfortunately, like the water freezes and you're on the erg, so on the rowing machine. So it was like twice a week on the rowing machine, just as hard as you can go.
Yeah, so 5K, how long does it typically take? Like a lead athlete?
So like the world record was set by a guy who was at Oxford with, it was pretty, that's a big boost of confidence for the coaching. It's like, oh yeah, this guy's been here for 4 years. He just set the world record. I think he went 14:54 or something like that, which is a 129.4 split, which is like incredible because a lot of people can't even hold that for 2,000 meters. And he held it for 5,000. Yeah. So we always joke.
It's brutal. I mean, I think I mentioned to you, I've been playing around with the ergometer a little bit. Yeah. And I think I can maybe 500 meters at that is like. Yeah.
That's
like,
no joke.
I want to throw up. Like you're just like, oh my God, like I want to throw up. And I don't even know if that's right. Like I think I could do I don't even think I can pull on sub 130. Like I could probably pull like high 130s for like 500 meters or something.
Yeah, it was exceptional. And he's more or less my size. So to do it at my size and weight is just like even more impressive. Okay.
How does it feel when you're doing a 5K maximum? I mean, 15 minutes as hard as you can. Yeah. Like, are people like puking afterwards? I mean, it's
some
hard.
guys, some guys like will get a bit more dramatic and fall off. But I mean, it really depends on your pacing. If you're in shape and you've paced it well, then it hurts a lot. Yeah. But
you're a professional. You know how to do it.
Yeah. But if you've mispaced it, or maybe you're a little sick, or maybe something's happened. And that's when it can get really painful because you mentally have this idea of like where you should be. It's like your perception of reality and reality are pretty far apart, can sometimes be pretty far apart. Right. And that in between, just like that disappointment in between can be pretty painful, both like physically and then the realization.
You get the live data.
Oh yeah, you have a screen right there.
So you're just like, I want to pull 129, and you're like, you go off strong, and then you're like, oh my, I can't hold this.
I think if it's going well, it probably shouldn't hurt for the first 2/3, I would guess. I mean, everyone else is different, but I think if you're really feeling it before halfway, that's probably a sign that that you might want to slow down a little bit. That today's not going to be.
Was the guy who broke the world record using ketones? I know there was one of the studies in the participant. I don't exactly know what distance they did, but. There was a world record set on the erg using the ketone ester.
I think that was
a different one.
I think that was a 30-minute at rate 20, which is like measures. It's a good test of aerobic capacity, but also like power because it's a set stroke rate. Right. So it's like, go as fast as let's go as far as you can in 30 minutes at this like specific stroke rate. So really.
20 strokes per minute.
Yeah. No, this one is just like, go as fast as you can, as hard as you can, any stroke rate you want.
So as someone who has played around with the ergometer, so what stroke rates are you guys targeting during practice and then during competition? So like, as a layman here, like 20 is like fairly low. Yeah, right? Yeah, definitely. As like someone that just goes to the gym, like I think a normal steady pace would be like around like 30, like high 20s maybe. Just as someone who's just like kind of pulling at like a normal, like consistent pace.
Yeah. For us, we'll never really go lower than 18. Okay. But then when you're competing, you'll go. So there's like 3, I guess, facets of a race. You have the start, which are kind of like the hardest strokes you're probably going to take, but they're also the highest strokes you're going to take. So you'll be up to anywhere like 44, 46, 48. Okay. And then you'll settle down probably to the high 30s, 38, 39. Okay. And then you have the sprint. So it'll come back up. Probably not quite as high as you were at the...
The stroke rate's quite high.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys obviously are working hard.
Oh, yeah. But I think like the general principle behind rowing is like it's distance per stroke. Right. So if you can get like even a millimeter more distance per stroke than your competition, you know, you're taking, who knows, 230 or so. Call it 230. So it adds up. Yeah. It really is a game of inches, or sometimes even less than inches.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've just seen, you know, some of the highlights where it's like literally going, it's like they're just neck to neck at that very, very end.
Yeah. I mean, the gold and the silver in one of the events. So it was the men's single scull. So one guy, 2 oars. Right. The gold and the silver was separated by, it might have even been down to the thousandths, which is, you know, at that stage, it's like you can't so reliably say. In swimming, for example, if that happens, they share the medal because they say we can't build these swimming pools to like within like you know,
error range.
Exactly, an error range where we know that you were, you know, starting and finishing at the exact same point. And, you know, that's a swimming pool is what, 50 meters? Right. I can't imagine that a 2,000 meter course.
Yeah. In like a open, like natural water.
Right. Yeah. So for it to come down to that, and, you know, it's like every stroke matters. Yeah. And, I mean, I think everyone who's rowed for long enough, you've probably been on this, like the winning side of that and the losing side of that. Yeah. And when you're on the winning side, you just think, man, like I'm happy, you know, you're thankful and you're like, but when you're on the losing side, you think, man, I wish, you know, you wish you had gone just a little bit harder at some point in the race. Right. You wonder, could I have gone a little bit harder? What more could I have? Yeah. I mean, I'm sure like you could have on the plus side or on the downside, just you can have like these nightmare scenarios where like I took a little bit of a break and on, you know, 40% in, I could have pushed harder. Yeah. So like heart rate, lactate, or a couple of things that you guys were smart about. Yeah. Anything else? Like I know that heart rate variability. Yep, that was
okay. So like I mean, obviously that's gotten a lot of interest recently. Is that something that you still look at in terms of a sign for recovery? Do you actually use that as a way to size up or load up like your training blocks?
So I'd say since I've moved out here, I've really gotten away from a lot of the more objective in terms of like measurements of my like my biomarkers. But that is something that we used a lot, and there were a few apps, and like one of them's easy enough that you can just use the light on your camera of your phone to measure it.
Yeah. So you just put your finger on the camera and just
it can see. I guess it can pick up like your heart pumping blood, so it can pick up the variability. That was something we used, and there was a kind of a warm up that our physiologist kind of devised. That he devised in my last couple of months at Oxford. So I'm sure it's progressed, but I think I'd say like sometimes you just know. I think that's where you can't get. I think I got too in tune with not too in tune, but I got too focused on the numbers, and I didn't take a step back and say, how am I actually feeling? Yeah. And I think there is like an element of a big element of subjectivity as an athlete, where you need to say like, how do I feel? And you know, it can be as simple. There's a lot of techniques to monitor this. It can be as simple as like just writing down either in a spreadsheet or on a piece of paper. You know, it's like the stoplight method. I think that's something that they use in Australia. It's like, you know, if you feel good that day, it's a green. If you feel okay, it's an orange. If you feel bad, it's a red. And if you have enough, and that's just like a subjective thing. It's like, oh, I don't feel that great today. That's a red. You have enough of those in a days in a row. It's like, well, maybe something's up. Maybe I need to take some time off. Maybe I need to go talk to the coach.
Right.
I think it's really about finding like what works well for the athlete. And for me, I'd say right now where I'm at, it's probably more the subjective method. Like, how am I feeling?
Do you feel like that's because you become more of a mature, tuned to your body? Like you just know your machinery so well now, where it's like, I've seen the numbers. I understand my general zones. I know exactly, you know, how I feel when I get this threshold of heart rate. So, so that's the distraction for me now. Like I'm gonna just be like an intuitive animal, right? Like like a cheetah is not like measuring his like footsteps, right? Like you just run in 60 miles per hour. Yeah,
I think you do it long enough, and not to say that like you you know everything by any stretch of the imagination, but you do know yourself pretty well.
Right.
And I think it can be in some regards a distraction.
Yeah.
And it's like, for me, I go out there and now I just try to row the boat. It's
Right.
like silly or simple. Maybe it's an oversimplification,
Yeah.
but it's like, oh, if I feel that the boat needs more, I'll give it more. If it feels like it doesn't need as much, then I won't give it as much. But with the expectation that like when it's time to perform and race, and you know, when the clock is on it, as our coach says, that it's going to be everything I got.
I mean, is it also based on the coaches? Because I know that when we had Connor Barwin on the program, who's a
the
an
Eagle
NFL guy. It was interesting because like he went through a couple different coaches, like Chip Kelly, who I believe was like super into metrics, and he had like, and who's the current coach? It wasn't Chip Kelly, but like the current like Peterson, who was much more intuitive, and like he had an interesting perspective around like what was valuable and what was not valuable in terms of like how serious one should look at metrics. So it sounds like Oxford, very metrics driven, US national team, less so.
Yeah, I'd say our current coach has a great idea of like what is like very important and maybe what's more peripheral.
Right.
And you know, and I think he's right. I think he says, you know, you have a boat, some oars, some good athletes, and a coach, and that's all you need. And I think, unfortunately, and I've been guilty of this myself, you get too caught up in like you know, things that are related, but maybe only second or third order, and they are peripheral. And I think it's like having a balance.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, if the rowing isn't good and the guys aren't in shape and they're not good rowers, then all the other things in the world aren't going to matter. But if you have all those things taken care of in that order, then that's when you can start saying. And I think, you know, there is at times like people get like, oh, well, we need this supplement or we need this or that to, and it's like, well, maybe if you were just
a better athlete.
Yeah. Maybe if you just focused a bit more on like the technical side of rowing, or if you spent more time or like less time worrying about all these other things, like these more peripheral things. But,
I mean, I think that rings true to myself as well. I think one, I would say downside, if there's a downside to like the biohacking quantified self movement in the communities, that you have people that are just so obsessed with like these random markers or like these supplements or these like little hacks, and just like you don't even look that healthy. Like they're trying to like so much hack their sleep or their diet, and they're like not even just like doing the basics right, like just exercise, sleep, eat well. But if you're just like focused on like figuring out how to like optimize your sleep or like doing like 4-hour like, you know, super hack of diet, but you're not doing like the basic stuff, it's like you're doing it backwards. Like make sure you get the low hanging fruit first, and then optimize and tweak. And I think that you know, people in the biohacking community are just like, hey, these are some magic things that you should like look at, and like people just gravitate towards these shiny objects, and they just forget that end of the day, if you're like a runner or a rower, like the best thing to do is just row a lot. Right? Like, like don't, you know, play games.
No, I think that's a great point. Yeah. And it's like, do the fundamentals, do like the foundational stuff really, really well. And then if you get all that stuff done really well, then it's time to explore.
Right.
But I think often, like exactly like you said, people maybe they get caught off on a tangent. They're like, oh, that's like okay or pretty good. But like, I think people often look for shortcuts. And sometimes they think, oh, this is a shortcut for actually doing the work. When in reality, it's like, no, there's nothing legally available that's a shortcut. You know? And if it is a shortcut, there's probably a reason. You know, it's probably not a legal shortcut.
Yeah, no, I think it ends up, I understand that intuition, because oftentimes like you get diminishing returns from like rowing. So it's like, okay, or like doing the same thing over and over again. So it's like, okay, it's getting harder and harder to improve on this one single metric. I'm going to find another orthogonal thing to like practice on or like shift my attention to. And then you start investing more and more time in these like tertiary things, and you forget to actually do your basic thing. As we kind of wrap up here, I want to get a sense of like a pre-race. What's going through your mind? Are there rituals that you go through to mentally gear up for the big day?
I guess pre-race, I wake up that morning, and I guess depending on when the race is, they're kind of like subconscious things that I feel when I wake up that morning. And I think one of them is just like this maybe quietness and this kind of like wantingness to not really talk, but to be very internally focused. I know some guys listen to music, but I just want to stay as relaxed as possible. I don't want to go over the peak on the arousal curve. I think that was something that early in my like athletic career, I was like, oh, I need this music, and I'd get really hyped up, and then it'd be my time to go out and perform, and I'd be like, I'd feel flat
because you're just too hyped up on like
adrenaline, and you're just like, it's like, no, just like stay relaxed. And these days, I'd say caffeine is something like coffee. I don't drink it except for when it's time to like for a maximum effort performance. And I think last time I was in here, I was talking to you guys, like I'll have like 5 or 6 cups when we do racing. And I know that's probably more. It's probably like 200 or 300 milligrams more than most people would say. Oh, it's like, the recommended amount for an athletic
like
boost.
500, 600 mgs.
Yeah, but I just kind of love that feeling, and it gets the adrenaline really going. Yeah. It kind of gets that fight or flight going.
Right.
And when you're racing or you're about to line up in a sport, there's like, it's not like you're just going to walk off the start line. Right. It's like, no, it's time to go.
And have you been playing around the ketone ester?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, like with some of our longer endurance stuff, I've been playing around with it. But hopefully this coming winter, I'll be able to use it some more when we use get some really objective measurements, especially when we start doing longer pieces on the rowing machine.
Interesting.
Definitely.
I used to work out with a lot of music, and I've like, especially when I'm doing like longer runs, I just totally just like, I think it's distracting.
It can be, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, like you're getting overly hyped, or you're like listening to the words, or you're like singing along, and it's like not the rhythm that you actually want to be going or something. Yeah. I think that's interesting to like just be within yourself and like find the focus internally rather than like having some music to hype you up.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of, you're almost like zen as you're going into the race.
I can't think of too many sports where like when you're actually out there performing, you're able to listen to
it's illegal for rowing, right?
Well, there's no music, I guess like when you're on the rowing machine, you can have music. Yeah. It depends on the coach again. Yeah. If there's music playing or not. Right. The coach at Oxford, no music when you're testing. Right. He's like, well, there's no music when you're
in competition.
when you're in competition. And I think, it's like it's just like a little thing to have. It's like makes you gives you a little mental edge. And even if it's only a perceived mental edge, then that can be just as worthwhile.
Right. I mean, I've seen some research where if the rhythm of the music actually matches your cadence, like it helps reinforce like your cadence. I'm just like, speculating here. Yeah. Like, okay, if you have like target stroke rates.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like we want to do like 44 strokes per minute in the first quarter. Like you just like time it out and you like have like your earbuds in and like, okay, just match the music.
Yeah.
I just wondered if like that could be kind of like a little hack that would actually, be beneficial.
In rowing, what I find surprisingly helpful is like having other people kind of in the rhythm other people generating a rhythm, whether it's on the erg or in the boat. And that's something I think like as you get better in rowing, and I'm sure there are anecdotes in other sports, running, cycling, or swimming, but there are guys that you find you just match up better with. Yeah. And you'd prefer to be with them, not just because they're good in their own right, but because there's like this synergy. Yeah. The two or three or four of you is just working together, and it just gets like the best out of everyone. So there's definitely something in terms of, like this rhythmic boost.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one thing that I thought was like just so natural or unnoticed in rowing, where you guys shift your stroke rates kind of dynamically, right? Like, it's like, okay, you see someone like coming up towards you or they're trying to catch someone. How do you guys line up the stroke rates? Because like you watch on TV and it's like everyone's like a machine, like very, very synchronous.
A lot of practice.
So like, are you guys like spotting the guy in front of you, and like who sets it? Is the coxswain just like saying like, hey, go faster, go slower? Like, how does it all work?
Generally, like the coach will say, like, this is what I want. And then the stroke man's the guy who's up in the front of the boat.
Yeah.
And if there's a coxswain, the two of them will work together.
Yeah.
But there's some boats where there is no coxswain. So it's just, a one-man boat or two-man woman boat or, four-person boat.
Yeah.
And then it's up to the guy who's stroking it to kind of set the rhythm. And it's really...
So the stroke guy is the guy that's everyone gets to see.
Everyone's looking at him or her. And they set the rhythm for the crew. And the best thing you can do being behind them is just follow them. Okay. Even if what they're doing isn't like technically the right thing to do, what they're doing is the right thing to do because they're stroking it.
Yeah.
So but that's something that takes a long, long time to figure out. And you get guys that are better for whatever reason, better in that seat. And then you get guys that are, for whatever reason, better following than they are at setting a rhythm. Right. And it is like, I think it's like the big picture, it's like very simple, but it's very nuanced.
Right.
And there's a lot of like subtle things that go on that I think to like just the casual observer, you don't appreciate. Like, oh, the boat isn't actually always set.
Right.
Like if you're not rowing well together, then the boat flops around a lot.
Right.
And that is like frustrating as a rower, and then also really slows you down because it's like, the oars are dragging along the water.
Or doesn't feel stable, right?
Exactly.
You just can't push full power in.
For whatever reason, I think because you have to really develop a lot of these fine-tuned movements, it just does take a long time.
Yeah. Everything at the highest level is just like so much nuance that just like it's hard to explain, like, okay, why are you doing this one specific thing? It's like, I don't know, like it's the 15 years of like doing this.
Yeah.
What do you do outside of, full-time work, full-time rowing? Like what's like, I mean, it sounds like you have your time off to like really relax.
Yeah.
What's like your off days look like?
I guess I just try to spend it with friends in the city. I think, I'm really close with my friends on the team, but sometimes the best thing for everyone is
fully
to
unplug.
Go our separate ways. Like some guys like to do one thing. I mean, I'd say, every other weekend we'll spend weekends together. Like we'll either go get dinner or we'll go out to a bar and have a few beers. But, I'm lucky in that I have a lot of friends who live in and around here. So I get to jet off and see them. And, like I said, I love the beach. I love hiking. So I'll try to do
just outdoor stuff in Bay Area is awesome.
And I feel like this is like one of, if not the best place in the world to be outside.
Yeah.
And every day is more or less just like perfect.
Yeah.
Especially when you come from the East Coast. I love Boston. I love New York, but
you're not frozen for a third of the year.
Yeah. Or right now, it's like 95 and 100% humidity. And you just like don't want to be outside because of that either.
Yeah.
So, but it's like 60, 70 degrees, sunny for the most part. Yeah. It's just like, it's a good place to live. And there's a lot of good things about it.
Yeah. So what's next for you? So next 4 weeks, getting up for the World Championships.
Yeah.
Obviously that's probably where your mind's at. Yeah. I guess it'll be interesting to kind of like, what exactly is that going to look like? And then the second part of the question, what are you looking forward for the rest of 2018? I mean, and looking forward to Tokyo. Like, what's next? What's new for you?
So we're here for, I think, one more week, and we leave next week, and we go to Princeton, New Jersey, which is about 75 minutes outside New York. Yeah. And it's where the women's national team is still based. And until last summer, or like even this fall, winter, the men's national team was based there as well. And I don't know how either team ended up there, but that's where they've been for a long time. Yeah. And so we'll be there. And that's, I think, to kind of get onto a body of water where our coach, who I mentioned, he coached for 3 or 4 Olympics, he has like a lot of historical data from, if we do pieces on this body of water and we go this fast, that's a really good indicator that we're able to go over. And then also it breaks up the flight to Bulgaria.
Right. You can shift the time zones a little bit.
Yeah.
As opposed to just like boom.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's 8 hours from the West Coast to
Bulgaria?
Mainland Europe? I think because I think England is
sounds about right. I make this phone call often.
It's a lot. So
8 hours.
Help break
8
that
hours.
up.
Yeah.
So we'll break up the flight, and then we'll leave Princeton after a week, and we'll get to Bulgaria a week before racing begins. Okay. So probably 12 days before the final. to fully acclimate, get used to the water there. And I think the duration of the sessions will be greatly reduced, start really like tapering up, just getting ready to go. And it's good. I think but you want to feel like you have too much energy. That means you've done it right.
Right. So when you completely stop, like, is it 3 days out, 2 days out?
You'll keep training at least once a day.
Okay.
And you don't ever want to like go, I guess there is always the threat of like going too easy for too long. I think that you always want to have some intensity just so your body isn't totally shocked by like, oh man, we have to go really hard. And obviously coaches have different philosophies with that. But so the 16th is like the big day on the calendar.
Okay.
And then after that, I'll be in Europe for a little while, see some friends in England, and I'll come home and just, I'll go home back to Boston, see my mom and dad and my sister, and it'll be great. It'll be really good to just chill out.
Get a little bit of breather.
Yeah. Kind of like, I guess we're talking about recovery. I think having 2 weeks totally off, 3 weeks totally off is, it in the short term, it might seem daunting to some people, like, whoa, how could I take that much time off? But long term, I don't think there's anything better you could do, because you get it back so quickly. And it also, I think, just lets your entire body just like kind of shut down, repair itself, gear back up. And I think for me, I found mentally too, it makes the long, hard months much easier when you've had this break to just kind of like.
How many months have you been training up towards this World Championships?
So I took the biggest break I've ever taken in my life almost a year ago. It was 5 weeks.
Okay.
Pretty much all of August and part of September or something like that.
Okay. You're basically like a full 11 months in straight since then.
But before that, I think I was talking to my parents about it. I think it might have been like a long time before. I think the longest I'd ever taken off before that was about 7 days.
Okay.
And just looking back on it, I don't think that's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think as you get older, you need.
But you're younger, so you can take more damage.
Yeah. As you get older, like I said, you need to be smarter. So you just need to you need to be in tune, and you just need to say like, what do I need?
Yeah.
And, when I feel like the time is ready to get back training, like you kind of want to be itching to come back. You don't want to be, 7 days off and then be like, oh, I should, I'm not ready to go back, but I feel like I should. You want to be like, no, look in the mirror, be like, ooh, I need to get back to working out. Put on a few pounds.
Awesome. Well, good luck in Bulgaria.
Thank you.
I'm
very
sure
much.
you'll do well.
Yeah.
Which events should we be watching out for you on that?
The men's 8.
Men's 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the heavyweight, big cojones.
Yeah, blue ribbon. Yeah. I think it's the last event of the regatta. If it's not the last, it's certainly one of the last events of the regatta. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much for having me in.
We'll have to have you back on and
absolutely. I would love
cheer
to.
on and talk about how you got the gold medal.
Deal.
No pressure.
Deal.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks so much.
As always, please send my producer Zill and I feedback at podcast@hvmn.com. iTunes reviews are always appreciated. And remember, you'll score a free Sprint Mini in the process. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. And talk to you soon.